It's been proven that students who are having fun and happy most often have a higher rate of learning. So why can't school be more like Disney World? My guest today is Mr. Jonathan Alsheimer, author, speaker, and legendary educator. We discuss his take on active learning and how he makes his classroom engaging and fun.
When I come into my classroom, it's like, listen, if I'm bored, so are my students. So how
Yes.
can I take something that might be boring and how can I put a little twist on it? Because as a classroom teacher who's a father, who's a speaker, who's an author, who's a this, who's a that, and any teacher in that matter, you wear 1,000 hats. Like, I don't care if you're an author, teacher, whatever. Like, you're a parent, you're a mentor, you're this, you're a coach,
You're a counselor, you're a
this, you're that. It's
psychologist, you're a
all over. But
nanny,
yeah,
right?
you're pulled in 1,000
Yep.
directions. So you don't have unlimited time to do lesson planning. So how can you twist what you do to make it a simple activity that enhances the engagement process? And of course, my passion, my energy is going to ignite that beautiful flame. But at the same time, sometimes I can sit back and just let it roll and watch the loveliness happen in my classroom because it works.
A lot of teachers are going to say, I just don't have ideas. I'm not creative. Where do you get your ideas?
Man, that is such a good question. And that's a problem everybody has. There's a couple of things I do. Number one, I look at what the kids do and I think, how can I use that or what they're interested in, right? I look at games, simple games. Like, for example, one time I was like, I don't know what I want to do to review this content that I'm just covering today in a way that's interesting. So I was like, how about this? Go fish. And there's a card game, Go Fish, but there's also a matching game, Go Fish. And I was like, what if I had kids, like, we just did this content, they know there's a game coming, and I have them it's a very simple idea, but what if I put like questions and answers or definitions or whatever you want to do on the back of these note cards, and we play a game with it, and all of a sudden kids have to memorize and they don't even realize they're memorizing or learning or whatever.
Right.
And sometimes I'm thinking about, like, how can I take a twist on anything that's small and change it? Like, for example, we're doing a debate in class. And you do debates all the time in class, right? This is nothing new. This is something people have been doing for forever. So in my class, I was like, well, what about a silent debate? I wonder what that would do, or how can I change the debate? So I came up with a silent debate where, like, we take big anchor chart paper and we put it around the classroom. I'm not a huge anchor chart paper person. I rarely ever use it, but in this case, it was awesome because I put this stuff around my room. And then I say, okay, I'm going to post these really specific, either essential questions or open-ended questions. And you have to go around the room and you have to say, in terms of writing, what you would say in the classroom. You can either make a comment on what I wrote, you can answer what I wrote, you can write a question about what I wrote. And then as you go around the room, you go around a second time and maybe even a third time, and you do the same thing with what other kids wrote. Oh, I like this idea. What about this? Next thing you know, we had these anchor chart papers that were loaded with good questions, great comments, and sometimes from kids who rarely spoke out in class. And it was literally looking at what I did and thinking, how can I change it just a little bit? Another one was, how can I take a game that we all know and love and turn it into an activity? So I took, like, this idea of bingo, where you have the little sheet of paper and you got the little bingo pieces on the sheet of paper with the questions. And I thought, how can we turn this into something different? Let's make human bingo, where I duct tape my floor and make the chart on my floor, and then the people, my students, are my actual bingo pieces. And I give them either the answers or the clues to put in their little box wherever they want. And it's team versus team, so they can't see. And then I say a clue or a question or whatever, and then they have to quietly, and they can use their notebook. So they're shuffling through their notebook, like, oh, there's the answer right there. Someone has to stand and grab the paper. And then as soon as there's a line of kids, it's a bingo, and they win. Maybe a piece of candy or maybe a point, and we turn it into a game on the board. But all of a sudden now kids are moving and they're thinking, and it's literally looking at what I've already done and thinking, how can I change it up a little bit? You don't have to, like, build a rocket ship and go to space. You can literally just look at, like, I did this worksheet activity last year. How can I turn it into a way where I can get kids up and moving around my room? And if they're doing that, more than likely, man, they're smiling, they're laughing, they're talking. If they're collaborating, and maybe they're creating something. These are all different ways to do it, but I like to keep it simple. I don't like to spend hours on Pinterest, and I certainly don't have tons of money to spend on teachers pay teachers.
Right.
I literally look at what I did. How can I change it in a simple fashion that will ignite some learning? And if the content's engaging and fun, man, that learning is going to stick.
Like, how do you come up with your ideas? I mean, would you consider yourself a little more creative than some other teachers who say, I don't have ideas? Or are you just sort of recycling? Are you borrowing from other teachers? Are you going on to Google? Are you going on to, sharemylesson.com? Where is your inventory coming from?
Oh man, there's no one spot. There's no one spot. If you're a teacher that does this work for long enough, there's no one spot. Part of it's I'm very creative, and then part of it's I steal everything. If you're a good teacher, man, you're stealing from everybody.
Absolutely.
And you're the best thief in the whole room.
Amen.
And if you're not stealing from others, man, what's wrong with you? The idea is that I share an idea, and then you share an idea, and then whatever teacher down the hallway shares an idea at the staff meeting. You could be teaching for 20 years and think, man, I'm just not a good teacher. I bet you have that one banger lesson, or maybe you have a ton of great ideas and you share them out at a staff meeting, or you share them at a PLC, and then someone puts those in a document. Now, all of a sudden, I've got your idea, their idea, that person's idea. Maybe I had 10 good ones, right? And now all of a sudden I got 20 good ones, and we continue this work over the course of years. And now we have an encyclopedia of awesomeness that we can use. And don't get me wrong, it's not about like it has to be a 7th grade math idea. It's got to be something that's moldable, adaptable, like the Go Fish game or the Human Bingo game. It doesn't matter what content you teach. It doesn't matter what grade level you teach. You can, and part of it is also this understanding as an educator. I'm not going to steal something from you or borrow something from you, however you want to phrase it. I'm not going to take your awesome lesson and then just hit the play button and sit in the back and just take a nap.
Right.
Like, this is something where, like, I'm going to take your idea and then I'm going to look at my students and I'm going to make the game plan fit my players. I'm not going to make my players fit the game plan. I'm going to look at what your game plan was. What was your lesson? What was your activity? Look at my content and think, how can I mold this, adapt this, differentiate this so it meets the needs of my students in a way that's successful in my classroom with who I am as a teacher?
I'm gonna ask you several questions, sort of rapid fire questions. I want your replies to them. Doing activities in the classroom takes up too much, teaching time.
Yeah, you can't get through your standards, right? I hear that all the time. I actually had a family member who's a teacher say that to me one time. I can't play games in my classroom because that's wasted time. It's actually something I wrote in one of my first books. And I 100% agree with you. So many people think that. But you know what? Here's the deal. You can pound through your curriculum and you can get a kid to retain a small fraction of it because you're not making your lesson plans engaging, or you can try to have fun and create those activities where kids are moving, collaborating, creating, and having fun in the classroom. And you know what? I'll waste using your terminology and their terminology. I'll waste a few minutes at the end of a class to play a game. Maybe it's not going to crush the standard like I think. Maybe it's not going to crush the standard like anybody thinks. Maybe somebody's going to look at that and go, well, what are they learning with this? Right? But at the end of the day, those kids are going to leave the classroom with a smile on their face. You know what they're going to go home and do? They're going to go home and tell their parents that, man, this teacher is just a little bit different. Man, I love Miss Thomas's class. I've never been really big on fractions, but there's like, just something about this teacher and I want to be there. And you know what? You're going to get so much more focused, active learning from doing those things than you're ever going to do from just crushing through the content. Think about your own life. When are you the most engaged? The experiences that you remember the most, that you can recall the most, are probably the ones where you had the most fun. Think about your own life. Think about the times where you hung out with your family, or you went on this vacation, or you went swimming with dolphins, or you went to Disney World. Man, why can't school be more like Disney World, man? Where kids come in and they feel like everybody loves them. How you doing today? And they're like, get away from me. You know what I'm saying? But like when they go into the classroom, man, there's not infinite. I get it. Like, we can't make our school like classrooms like Disney World. We don't have like $1,000 to build $10,000 to build a roller coaster or whatever in our classrooms. But what we can do is we can make it engaging and fun, and kids feel like they're valued and seen. And all of a sudden now they're going to remember those things as opposed to just crushing through a curriculum.
Right. Lesson planning takes too much time coming up with activities.
I would say that's a great question. And I'll say this right here. I'll say lesson planning in general takes too much time depending on where you're at, because some schools demand certain long, huge lesson plan templates and all this different stuff. For me, you come into my classroom, I have an open notebook, I have an open lesson plan, and it's detailed, super detailed. But at the end of the day, for me as a teacher, like, I don't need to put 400 hours into typing up something that goes into some database that nobody reads for 5,000 years. But when you walk into my classroom, I'm going to have a game plan. Man, you watch any sports team, man. The best sports teams have a great game plan, detailed to a T, and they're willing and able to adjust when needed. Teachers are the same, right? When you come into a classroom, if you're just kind of winging it, like, kids are going to know that. You need to have a game plan ready to rock and roll, and you need to have it planned out. Man, like, you need to know, like, all right, in the next couple of days, I'm going to be doing this. If you come into my classroom, my activities, I'm not doing them just to do them, right? There's a purpose for every single thing that I do. I'm going to teach you here how to write a certain way so that then I can use that writing ability to do this, or I'm going to teach you how to think a certain way to help me with an activity down the road. And you have to think about those things. I'm not saying spend hours lesson planning. I'm not saying that. I'm saying maybe get on social media and follow some really good educators who pump out some really good lesson ideas and steal what they do. And that alleviates probably 95% of your lesson planning problems right there.
All right, last one. Activities in the classroom creates a messy, chaotic classroom.
Oh, dude, bring it, man. Come on, man. Come to my classroom. I'll tell you right now, like, messy and chaotic, but under control, man. Yes. Straight active learning. You're going to see, like, I ask when I do workshops and speak at different schools and in conferences, I talk about that. What does engagement look like? And you'll really quickly, what you hear is educators are like, hey, engagement could be quiet or it could be crazy loud. Same with disengagement, can be quiet too. Disengagement can be the same, or it can also be crazy loud. You can have kids sitting there writing or being quiet and they're not learning a thing. Or you can have kids sitting down writing great conversations because they had a crazy classroom the day before. And maybe you have a crazy classroom where tons of active learning are going on. But I will say this, man, when there's chaos in the classroom, if it's controlled chaos, there's probably going to be some cool engagement happening. There's probably going to be some good learning going on, but it's got to be controlled. If it's not controlled, man, you lost it all. And that's a whole nother conversation around classroom management right there.
Your key phrase is next level teaching. What does that mean?
I define it as this, man. You look at wherever you're at and what you do, and you think, how can I get a little bit better? It's not about being perfect. It's not about perfection. It's all about progress, man. Whether you're talking about leadership, whether you're talking about teachers, it's looking at where you're at and thinking, how can I make things a little bit better, a little bit cooler, a little bit more authentic? How can I get a little bit better at building relationships with kids? How can I get a little bit better at creating a culture and climate in my school where teachers want to come work for me? How can I get a little bit better at the lesson planning that I'm doing so that kids are excited to come into my classroom? And that's what it's all about. It's not about building a rocket ship and going to outer space and being perfect every single day. That creates too much stress. It's about how can we motivate students through what we bring to the table, and that authenticity is going to drive our schools forward.